If you haven't read the disclaimer at the beginning of this video, please go ahead and do so now. Again, everything I'm about to show you is free. At no time are you going to have to enter in credit card information or your personal information or anything. This is accessed through a few websites here that they get their information from, government court records in different jurisdictions across the United States. It will only work in the United States, and you could use this information to find out the criminal record of anybody, from speeding tickets to failure to yield to, felonies, and it goes back as far as 30, 40 years. So it's pretty accurate, but you got to be precise in, the name and the state. So you got to be mindful of that, and I'm going to show you different ways around that to make sure you do get the necessary information you need. You could use this for personal reasons or professional reasons as far as employment. Personal reasons would be if you're dating somebody or your kids are around somebody, or you have some kind of affiliation with somebody, but you just want to make sure that they're, you just want to check their criminal record. Please keep in mind when you do retrieve information, that they're innocent until proven guilty, and this only shows the criminal charge. It does not show what happened in court. And I looked my own personal information up on here, and it was pretty accurate. I had like 3 speeding tickets, a failure to yield, and as a matter of fact, the failure to yield, I took it to court and was found innocent, but it's still on this. So please keep that in mind, that just because it's listed here does not mean that they were found guilty. And if it's very, very important, or the charge is very severe, and it does impact your life in some way that you're around this person, I'd recommend you call the county that the crime happened in, and they should be able to give you the accurate information. So to proceed, that's what I would do. As far as if you're an employer, if you're going to use this, I would recommend you consult an attorney. And the reason is because the laws are changing, and you have to be very consistent and very uniformed on how you do it with all your employers or employees. And there's state laws, there's federal laws, there's local laws, and they're constantly changing on what you can and cannot do. So I would recommend you proceed with caution if you're going to use it for that reason. Now, first website we're at, it's called courtrecords.org. That's courtrecords.org, O-R-G. And all these websites I'll put in the description, so you can just link directly to. And this is the front page. And what you're going to do is put the first name and the last name and then the state. Now, keep in mind, you've got to be specific and you've got to be exact. If for whatever reason, for example, the guy's first name is John, but it's actually Jonathan, then it could be spelled at the end with an A-N or an O-N. It will not pick it up. You got to be specific. And please keep in mind too, there can be errors in the records. They might have it spelled differently on their end, and they got it wrong on their end. That's very rare that happens, because they're using, probably the DMV records that have to be precise. But just please keep that in mind. And also too, I found a little glitch. It could either be on my end or the website's end. I have found that I've entered a couple of times my own information, and it didn't pick up. And what I had to do is this is the front page of the website courtrecords.org. I had to actually go to the front page to make it take, and then I actually clicked on states and entered it in. So for whatever reason, if you enter some information in, if you're looking up a couple of records, make sure that it's picking it up. It'll say on the very bottom whether it picked up or not. It'll say the name and the state of the person. And if you see that it's from the previous search, it did not pick up. All right, so let's go ahead. I was going to use my own personal information on here, my own records, because it's nothing but, you know, traffic tickets, and it doesn't give out that much information. I was just going to block out, you know, the date of birth and all that. But according to the terms and conditions, I can't do that on this website. So I'm just going to have to show you a raw form. So this is what will come up. Let's say we enter a fake name John Doe, which is a fake name that they use on TV all the time. And as you can see here, I blocked out the ID case number and the date of birth. So with all the information, it's pretty clear cut what you have to put. You know, it's going to usually be an arrest, and of course it's going to give the first name, the last name, and usually the middle name and then date of birth. And the main thing also to look at is the conviction date, and rather the offense description. The offense description is going to be the main thing that you look at. A lot of times they'll do it short. They'll put, you know, they'll put S for speeding, and sometimes you might have to look it up to see what the offense is. If it's a simple offense like speeding or you ran a stop sign, a lot of times they won't even fill it out. It'll just be blank, and that's a good thing because, you know, there's nowhere in your life that you're going to have to really care if the person that you're affiliated with has got a speeding record. You know, not that big of a deal usually, unless they're driving your kids or whatever, and you see multiple, you know, traffic violations. Then you might want to take note. But you know, the more serious crimes, when you get into felonies, you know, whether that be grand larceny or you're a sexual predator, you've been arrested as a sexual predator, or assault and battery, and anything serious, you'll see that they're a lot more thorough with describing the state, the city, the full name, the middle name, the conviction date, and the county and the court that it's in. They're much more thorough, so that's a good thing. You know, if it's assault and battery, it'll say right here on the description. So, you know, like I said, I pulled up my records, and one of my records is not even, you know, I was found innocent on, which was a failure to yield, and it's still in the system. And I'm thinking that they're supposed to take that out. So please keep that in mind if you pull something up on somebody, to just make sure you know, if it's important to you, you need to make double, you know, to verify it if it's a serious crime, just to make sure that it is what it is. But so you might be asking, and this is extremely accurate from what I've seen so far. You have to make sure you get all the state. So if the person committed the crime in, let's say, California, in the year 2000, but now we're in, you know, 2016, 2017, and they live in a completely different state, you will not retrieve the information by putting their current state if the crime is committed in another state. You have to be very mindful of that, and you have to know, or try to know, or guess what state that they were in, or where they were born in, to retrieve the most information. So that's something to keep in mind. There's several ways you can find that information. One tricky thing is maiden names. You know, if a woman's gotten married, you know, and she's committed a crime under her maiden name, and now she's married, it's not going to pick up if you put her maiden name in there. So you have to sometimes you have to be creative and use other websites. I'm using a gentleman here that we're all aware of. He's been convicted. He's a formal, you know, football star. This is OJ I'm talking about. And when I say convicted, I mean he was convicted of an armed robbery, not the first crime that he was accused of. And regardless of your belief on that, it doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and go to how you would retrieve more information. Believe it or not, classmates.com, if you've never been there, It's basically a website that you use to find out, to go chat with your high school graduate friends, and they'll post pictures, and they'll post, now they're posting yearbooks on there where you can see full yearbooks. But when you go to classmates.com, you do have to register with them, but you don't have to pay. You could just basically have your information in there and put a couple of things in there, but you do not have to pay. And as you can see here, I put on here Orenthal Simpson, that's OJ. And it'll show all the Orenthal Simpsons. Importantly, it'll show the graduation date, because that's another thing that you need to verify the person that you're looking for is the person you're looking for. If you have their birth date, that will give you, you couple that with the state that they're in and their birth date and their name, that will give you a certainty of who it is in the state that you're trying to find it. So there's actually several Orenthal Simpsons, but you'll find out where they graduated from and the state that they graduated from, and then you'll be able to go into the school registry on Classmates, and it'll show you a lot of times, if not most of the times, the person's maiden name, if it's a female. So if their maiden name's Jones and now they're married to Smith, it'll actually show on there, because it's a form that they enter, Mary Jones Smith. And so if you're trying to find out her criminal record in the state that she was born in and she spent her first 30 years in, you'll be able to put the correct last name. And so Classmates is a valuable tool to retrieve that information. As you can see, Orenthal's got several different Orenthals that graduated from different states. I went ahead and blocked it out for private reasons, but you will be able to eventually find usually who you're looking for. Facebook, Facebook's always a good one to look at. With Facebook, you can type in their name, their full name, and you might have multiple results, but what you can do is actually put their state next to it. So if the person's name's John Doe, and they live in, let's say, Missouri, in Facebook, just type in John Doe space Missouri, and a lot of times their name will pop up, and of course you'll be able to recognize their picture. With that information, a lot of times you can find a birth date, you can find their home state, because it'll say, was born in so-and-so, graduated from so-and-so. And so with that information, you can use that to obtain what state they're in order to enter it into courtrecords.org. So then you'll be able to go back here, and then you can make sure you type in the right state, and then you can verify the birth date. You can track back and guess pretty close to what their birth date is by the year that they graduated. They're going to usually graduate at the age of 17 or 18. So from that information, you'll be able to find out close to what their birth date is. And so the reason you need that is because if you're in California and you're typing in John Smith, there can be 20 John Smiths. And just because you see a John Smith that's committed assault and battery, it might not be your John Smith. So that's the reason you want to try to pinpoint their date of birth to the exact date if possible, and the state that the crime was committed in. Okay, so Facebook, and here's one that a lot of people don't think about. MySpace. This is actually a jewel, because with MySpace, people forget that they even had an account, and it's an older website, 10 years old, where people will enter in information and they forget they even have it. Facebook, they'll update and they'll delete things or even delete accounts, but on MySpace they completely forget about, or they might not even have a password or the ability to delete the account anymore. So you could use MySpace to retrieve, information about when they were born and what states they've been in. So another really, really good website. Mugshots.com is a good website to use. That's mugshots plural with an S.com. And with this particular website, it'll show people who've had, mug shots within the last 30 or 40 years taken. Some states will participate in this. A lot of them is not made public information, so mugshots.com can't get access to it. California is one that does not allow it, and there's a few that will. I'd say half and half. So you can't always go by this. It's a limited tool, but it is a good tool altogether, because you don't have to enter the person's state. And only thing you have to do is put their name. If you could get their full name, that's even better. And so, for example, here I put OJ on here. To be technical, if I were going to do it for real, I'd put Orenthal James Simpson, the full name. The reason I'm doing it this way, OJ Simpson football, is because I don't want to, other names to pop up, just for privacy reasons. And as you can see here, here's his mugshot back from 1994, which is interesting because, keep in mind, this mugshot was taken for a crime that he was found innocent in. And he could technically have that mugshot removed from any public source and on record, because he was not, guilty of it. Now, he is guilty of, was found guilty of armed robbery, which is why he's in jail today. And thus the reason, he's a public figure, is the reason I'm using him as an example. So that's a really good website to use, is mugshots.com. Another one, and I didn't mention this before, but Intellus.com, and Intellus is spelled INTELIUS.com. The good thing about Intellus is that you can use this to acquire more information, just like with MySpace and Facebook, and it'll give you more information than what you're needing to ultimately be able to plug into courtrecords.org, because that's the main site that you're using to look up what the person's information is. And the good thing about Intellus, let's go ahead and put Orenthal Simpson. We'll put California. Search. The good thing about it is it'll put his name, it'll put his age, it'll put the state that he's in, and it'll also usually, in this case it didn't do that, but it'll usually put past states that he's lived in. Well, you can see here address history: Beverly Hills, Los Angeles, San Francisco. So it'll mention other states. So if you're entering the person's name in and you're trying to retrieve it for courtrecords.org, it's going to give you other states to work with. It'll also give relatives, which might actually help in your search as well. And it'll also put work history. I went ahead and blocked out the relatives, though, just because they're not public figures. So those were blocked out, but we got a good 5 names here. So Intellus, keep that one in mind. As an employer, if you're wanting to use this method to get information on who you want to hire, in the smaller company, you got more flexibility, like as an individual. As an individual, you have more flexibility on, your personal safety and whatever, and you could be a lot more, like I said, flexible with that. If you're a smaller company like 1 to 3 employees, that'll give you a little bit more freedom on how to search. But as with any employers, I'd recommend you consult an attorney first, and just find out all the laws yourself before going through with using it to not hire somebody, because with the EEOC laws, the FTC laws that's out there, they're very strict with it, and you want to make sure you're doing everything by the letter. If we go to let's go to, right now there's a couple of articles. This is one with New York City, and they're making it, 100 plus cities, they're making it to where you're not allowed to have the on your application, you're not allowed to have the felony box. You know, when you've applied for jobs, they'll have a box at the bottom that says, "Have you ever been convicted of a felony?" Um, and you have to check it if you committed any felonies. And a lot of them employers, they'll just throw it in the trash, you know, if they see that. Well, as of now, a lot of states like New York and Ohio, in a lot of areas, you're not able to do that anymore. And in New York, you still have to. They'll let you pull a criminal record, but they have to follow protocol where they have to actually go through the whole hiring process first to see if you are capable of doing the job, and you've passed everything else. You've got an education in that field, etc., etc. You have to go through all of that, and then you can pull. You know, you can check their criminal background, which, you know, from an employer standpoint, you know, you're wasting a lot of money, and you find that it's a conflict of interest to have that person in a job due to liability issues. And that's another thing. You have to make sure that if they're a felon, that somehow that conflicts with their job, that would make your company, they would make your company have a liability by working there, you know, for whatever reason. Now, you could arguably say, well, if you have a felony, you know, that's a liability anyway, just due to statistics. You know, past behavior is a lot of times a good indicator for, you know, future behavior, as Dr. Phil would say. But according to the state, no, that's not true. So again, you know, be mindful of the different laws. Here's an article on Ohio. I'll put the link in the description, all these links. If you saw here earlier, I put up a link for Kentucky Sexual Registry. And to find out the state, you just basically go to Google and type in, let's say, California sex offenders. And then you click on that, and then you click on the registry. You know, look up an offender, and then you can look it up, and then you have to, you know, approve of all their terms and conditions. That's another thing that you have to be mindful of, because there are different states and have different laws with that. California, for example, seems like it's a very strict one. You have to pretty much say that you're not using the information unless there's a visible threat, or there's an immediate threat to somebody. If you do not have that information, which, you know, that's sort of a big deal. So, you know, you just can't willy-nilly just go searching in your neighborhood. I think that's, you know, you're not going to get in trouble if you do that, but that's the terms and conditions, and, you know, you have to follow the terms and conditions. But some states are more, you know, the only agreement that you have to agree to is that you don't use it to harass or to slander somebody. You know, for example, an example of that would be, you know, going to the person's neighborhood if they're on the sexual registry, and putting a flyer on all their doors. You know, that would be considered harassment. You couldn't do that. But again, this is another little tool that you can use. Just make sure you're going to the official website, the state's official website. That's pretty easy to tell by the wording and everything. All right, so if we look, here's I'll give you a link to this. Is the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. That's the department that handles all the you know, being fair as far as employment and all that good stuff. Of course, you have to always, you know, go by, you know, the Civil Rights Act and discrimination laws. You can't discriminate based on, you know, color or disability or veteran status or race, gender, or if you're pregnant, or if you have kids. You can't discriminate in any way towards that, and you could technically use that information as far as criminal record. There's some way where if you decide, hey, I'm just going to pull this up on white people because I think white people are more prone to be criminals, that would be discriminatory. And you couldn't do that. So you have to be uniformed throughout all your hiring, and I'd recommend keeping a record of that. But again, I would consult with an attorney, and you know and do your own research as well with that. This sort of reminds me of a horrible crime that was committed in the last week in Seattle. There was this mother who was murdered, and the original reports was that she was going on a blind date with this guy, and then she went missing, and then she ended up being her remains were found like in a recycle bin. And it just came out yesterday that you know she may have been dating him for a couple of times. It might not have been a blind date, but this is the alleged perpetrator. He hasn't been found guilty or anything like that. So, but I did research on him and looked up his information through these methods, and it just came out yesterday that he on his record he's got grand larceny, he's got which he has been convicted on, he's got assault charges, and um, a whole host of armed robberies and a whole bunch of different things like that. And it makes me wonder if this lady, who's a mother of 3 girls, or was a mother of 3 girls, if she had that information beforehand, or she was able to find that information out, if she would have continued to date him, And I would almost bet that she probably wouldn't. So that's one reason to be mindful of who you're around. And I was talking about Dr. Phil earlier. Dr. Phil said it's not like it was 20 years ago, 30 years ago. The rules have changed. Before, you should give people the benefit of the doubt. You should give people the benefit of the doubt. But he says that's not like that anymore. He says you do not give people the benefit of the doubt until they have proven that they're worthy of your trust, and they're worthy of giving them the benefit of the doubt. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with being proactive and protecting yourself, your family, your kids, your spouse, your friends. And all in all, most people are good. Most people are awesome, and they wouldn't hurt a fly. And most people, they grow. And just because a person has been found guilty of a serious crime and are guilty, whether that be assault or grand theft or whatever, drug abuse or drug distribution, it doesn't mean that they're all a bad person. And one wise person once told me, they said, it's not black and white. People are gray, and people have good in them and they have bad in them. We all do. And so, I'm not saying that you should use this to judge a person, but a lot of times past behavior will, be a predictor of future behavior. And it also is a time issue. If someone committed a crime 20 years ago, it's different than if they committed the crime a year ago, or this year. So you got to take that in consideration as well.